migrating your on-premise SQL database to Azure. So you've got these applications, you've got them on premise. Maybe it's something like an HR application, maybe it's a line of business application, something like generating loan applications if you're a bank coming in from a website, or maybe it's something like an IT ticketing system. Either way, you've got this app that's on premise and you need to migrate it, or you want to migrate it up to Azure for all of the different benefits that come with migrating something to the cloud. Or better, you're developing an application, you're developing it locally, and you're wanting to publish it to Azure. Whatever the case may be, you've got some sort of database that's on premise and you want to put it up in Azure. How do we go about doing it? Well, luckily, the migration process for Azure databases is really, really straightforward as long as you're working with SQL Server 2012 or later. They baked in a wizard that will walk you through migrating your database up to Azure, and they made it as simple as basically one step, where you just sign into the logical SQL Server that you generated in Azure, and then choose what size database you want. It's just that easy, and we're going to be walking through it so that by the time we're done with walking through this wizard, you're going to have your applications backend now hosted as a service in Azure. So let's get going and walking through the steps. I've got SSMS fired up here, and you can see I'm connected to a local SQL database here. It's on the 10 subnet in my local home office. Let me show you what we're going to be working with here. We're going to be migrating a specific database that I have so cleverly called Migrate this DB. There's not much going on here. I just slapped this together real quick so that we could walk through this. You can see we've got two tables. One that's kind of a lookup table, has dimensions like names, and then the other one is a sales table where we're just going to have three simple transactions, so in quantity, price, and a create date. So what I want to do is migrate it. I've done the development, I've created the structure here, and I'm going to be deploying this to Azure so that my application, my app service, can connect to this and start writing data to this database. So what do we have to do? First of all, you have to have SQL Server 2012 or later to perform this migration. Now, the later you get, like SQL Server 2017 or 19, you may run into some compatibility issues, so you need to look at your database-specific design, something like in-memory optimization that's not supported in the hosted database platform. So you got to make sure that checks out okay, but most standard databases are going to be just fine for this operation we're about to perform. Now, what we need to do is we need to go through the migration process. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on Migrate this DB. I'm going to go to Tasks, and then right here, about 2/3 of the way down, you see this Deploy Database to Microsoft Azure SQL Database. That's exactly what I want to do. Let's go ahead and give that a click, and it brings up this little wizard here that we can take a look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose Next. This is the splash page. It says, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. Now we need to connect to the server itself. This is going to be our Azure SQL Server, the logical SQL Server that we created when we created our free SQL database in the previous Nugget. So go ahead and click Connect, and we're going to go ahead and change the connection string to just point straight to that SQL Server, which is going to always end in database.windows.net. And then we're going to choose the SQL authentication because that's what I had set up as the SQL admin when we originally set up the database. We'll go ahead and give it our password real quick, and then we'll say connect, and sure enough it connects. Now right here, this is what's important, right? This section right here is where we determine our service tier and our database size. How many DTUs do we need, as well as the actual size of the database itself. So in this particular instance, since I know this is eventually going to be a production application, I'll say standard tier. I'm fine with 250 gigs, and then the service objective, this is how many DTUs we need. So what you're going to want to do is you're probably going to want to look at your DTU calculator, or you're going to want to hop into the portal itself and see the different sizes that are available to you. I'm going to leave this at S2, and the last step that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give this database a new name, so it's not Migrate this DB. We'll call this something like MyProd App, or whatever our database is going to be, and I'll click Next. And it's going to go through a validation process first before landing on the finalized page. Once we click finish, that's it. We're starting the migration. All you had to do was pick the database you want to migrate, then pick the size of the hosted database that you want using the DTU model, and then you click finish, and that's it. Check it out. We're going to click finish and watch what happens. And after about 4 or 5 minutes or so, even though it was kind of a small database, it still takes a little while to get the deployment done. But you see we've got the operation complete in place. Let's see what happens now when I go to my portal and see if that database exists. I'm signed into my portal. I'm going to choose the SQL databases. Check it out. my prod app. Right there it is. You can even go to query editor here, and we can, it's in preview, not a big deal, but we can actually query our database straight from the query editor. First of all, you do have to specify a login, not a big deal. We can just give it our password and click OK, or you can actually choose the Active Directory single sign-on right here if you had the credentials. Either way works. We'll hit OK to this one, and check it out. We'll expand tables, and there is our sales tables, for example. Let's just do a select star from and choose Run. And after several seconds, we get our sales data back to us. If I choose to execute it again, of course, it gets returned in 0 seconds because now it's held in cache. That's it. You have migrated a database from your local network up into the Azure cloud using the platform as a service, Azure SQL hosting. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.